What happens when the nation's highest law enforcement office is accused of playing politics instead of delivering justice? Imagine a Department of Justice that no longer inspires trust, a system where ordinary Americans believe investigations are driven not by law, but by who sits in the White House. That's the storm surrounding Washington right now. Senator Ted Cruz didn't hold back, accusing the Biden-Harris administration of weaponizing the DOJ, of targeting enemies while shielding friends, and of dragging the FBI's reputation through the mud. At the center of it all stands Pam Bondi, Trump's nominee for Attorney General, facing the question, can she restore faith and justice?
Willingness to take on this incredibly important office. You know, I have to say, I don't know that there is a more important position in this new administration than the position to which you have been nominated, Attorney General of the United States. I thought the exchange just a moment ago with Senator Hirono was illustrative. She asked you how you would respond if the president asked you to target his political enemies. It's rather striking because it's not a hypothetical. It has happened over the last 4 years. And I think perhaps the most tragic legacy of the Biden-Harris administration has been the politicization and the weaponization of the United States Department of Justice. And we don't need to ask hypothetically because Joe Biden publicly mused and allowed the New York Times to report it, calling on Merrick Garland, why will he not prosecute Trump more quickly? And Merrick Garland, sadly, he sat in that chair and promised to be apolitical, and he broke that promise almost the instant he walked into the Department of Justice. If you look on the west pediment of the Supreme Court of the United States, just above the entrance, there's a simple yet profound four-word phrase, equal justice under law. We have seen over the last 4 years a Department of Justice that systematically targeted the political opponents of Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, and that systematically protected his friends and allies. And it is tragic to see the loss of confidence in the American people, in the Department of Justice, and in the FBI. I would note, I don't think there's an institution in America who has lost more respect from the American people than the FBI has in the last 4 years. That is a grotesque violation of the obligation of the Department of Justice and the FBI. So I want to start with just a very simple question. If you are confirmed as Attorney General, will you pledge to fairly and faithfully uphold the law regardless of party?
So help me God.
Amen. Look, and I want to be clear for folks at home. I don't want a Republican Department of Justice. I don't want a Democrat Department of Justice. I want a Department of Justice that follows the damn law. And I think the American people do too. That shouldn't be too much to expect. Now, I'm grateful to President Trump for nominating you. I think on any objective level, you're clearly qualified for this position. You have been a prosecutor for decades. You have been the elected Attorney General of the state of Florida, the third largest state in America, for 8 years. Let me ask you, in terms of your practice, how many criminal cases over the course of your career have you personally handled?
Handled thousands.
How many of those were before a jury?
Hundreds. I don't want to overstate, but hundreds. I was in a courtroom for many years. I tried 4 when I was an intern, jury trials. I think you had to try at least 20 in misdemeanor before you went to felony. Then you were in court every day, and I was also lead trial attorney for many years trying many cases. So.
And how many of those cases would have been before a judge?
Oh, hundreds and hundreds as well, but hundreds before a jury, I would assume.
And as Attorney General of Florida, how many lawyers did you supervise roughly?
Approximately 400, Senator.
Now, I also want to clarify something. During the course of this hearing, several Democrat senators have referred to you as President Trump's, quote, personal lawyer. Now I don't believe that is an accurate characterization. As I understand it, you represented President Trump as a White House special advisor during his first impeachment trial. Is that correct?
Within Office of White House Counsel, yes, Senator.
And is working within the White House counsel's office different than representing Donald J. Trump individually as his personal lawyer?
Absolutely.
How's it different?
You're working for the government. You're working for the Office of White House Counsel. You're not representing him in his personal capacity.
And so you have not represented him in his business affairs, in his personal life, or in any of the criminal trials he has faced?
No, Senator.
And you know, when it comes to weaponization, it's worth noting that in more than 2 centuries of our nation's history, no president had previously been indicted, no president had previously been prosecuted until the Biden-Harris White House came along. And in the last 4 years, we've seen Donald Trump indicted and prosecuted not once, not twice, not 3 times, but 4 separate times.
And 2 assassination attempts, Senator.
I have to say, Javert from Les Mis would be chagrined at the efforts of Democrats to do anything possible to take him down. And I believe the real target in this was not President Trump, but it was the American people, that these prosecutions were brought because partisan prosecutors were terrified that the American people would do exactly what they did in November of 2024 and vote to reelect Donald J. Trump.
By 77.3%. Million Americans, 77.3 million Americans.
Will you commit every day as Attorney General to follow the law, to follow the Constitution, to uphold the rule of law without favor and without regard to the partisan position of any criminal defendant?
Yes, Senator.
That's what we should all expect from an Attorney General. Thank you.
We'll now recess for 30-minute lunch break. That means we'll be back.
Senator Cruz opened with fire, saying this wasn't some abstract hypothetical. He reminded the room that just a few years earlier, President Biden himself had reportedly mused about why Merrick Garland wasn't prosecuting Donald Trump faster. For Cruz, this wasn't speculation. It was proof that the Department of Justice had been turned into a political tool. He invoked the words carved above the Supreme Court, equal justice under law. Then he contrasted that ideal with what he said had been the reality: 4 years of unequal justice, where opponents were targeted while allies were protected. He warned that this selective enforcement had damaged the very idea of fairness. Cruz went further, calling out the FBI directly. He said no institution in America had lost more respect from the people over the last 4 years. The loss of confidence, he argued, was not just unfortunate but grotesque, a betrayal of duty. The DOJ and the FBI, he insisted, were supposed to stand above politics. Instead, Cruz painted a picture of agencies captured by partisanship. The message was blunt: Americans could no longer trust the referees to call the game fairly. And with that he turned to Bondi, pressing her to make a pledge. Would she, if confirmed, commit to upholding the law faithfully, without regard for political party? Cruz framed it as the simplest, most essential question. Bondi responded firmly, saying yes. She agreed that Americans deserve a Justice Department that follows the law, period. Cruz added that he didn't want a Republican DOJ or a Democrat DOJ. He wanted one that followed the law, and he believed that's what the people wanted too. That statement set the stage for what came next, a spotlight on Bondi's record and qualifications. Cruz reminded everyone that Bondi was no stranger to the courtroom. She had been a prosecutor for decades and served as Florida's Attorney General for 8 years in one of the largest states in the country. He asked her how many criminal cases she had handled personally. Her answer: thousands. Hundreds of them had gone before juries, while countless more had been argued before judges. She described how, early in her career, interns had to cut their teeth on misdemeanor trials before moving on to felonies. Day after day, case after case, she built her experience. She explained that she eventually became a lead trial attorney, trying many cases herself. Cruz also asked how many lawyers she had supervised as Florida's Attorney General. Bondi answered about 400. Cruz's point was clear. She had the background and the leadership experience to take on the nation's top legal role, but qualifications weren't the only issue. Cruz wanted to address what critics had been saying. During the hearing, several Democratic senators referred to Bondi as Trump's personal lawyer. Cruz gave her a chance to clarify. Bondi explained that this wasn't accurate. She had worked in the White House counsel's office during Trump's first impeachment, advising in her role as part of the government's legal team. She stressed that this was very different from being Trump's personal lawyer. She had never represented him in his private business, his personal life, or in any of the criminal trials he later faced. She drew a clear line. Serving in the government's legal office is not the same as being a personal attorney. That distinction mattered, and Cruz wanted it on the record. Still, the shadow of Trump loomed large over the hearing. Cruz pointed out that in over 2 centuries of American history, no president had ever been indicted, until now. Under Biden and Harris, he said Trump had been prosecuted not once, not twice, not 3 times, but 4 times. Cruz also referenced 2 attempts on Trump's life, painting a picture of relentless efforts to destroy him. He argued that the real target wasn't Trump alone, but the American people who supported him. In Cruz's telling, partisan prosecutors had been terrified that voters might once again choose Trump, and indeed he reminded everyone that in November of 2024 77.3 million Americans had cast their vote for him. Cruz's message was that the prosecutions were not about justice, but about stopping a political movement. He returned to his central question. Would Bondi, if confirmed as Attorney General, commit every single day to following the Constitution, to applying the law without political favor, and to upholding the rule of law? Again, Bondi answered yes. She said that's what the country should expect from an Attorney General. Cruz thanked her, saying that was the standard every American deserved. The hearing then broke for lunch, but the exchange left behind a bigger question for the country. Because at the heart of all of this is something deeper than politics. It's about whether Americans believe the justice system is still fair. If one side sees the DOJ as weaponized, and the other sees it as too weak, trust disappears from both directions. Bondi promised to restore impartiality, but promises alone may not be enough. The challenge of repairing faith in justice may be harder than any single case or investigation. It's about rebuilding confidence in the very idea of equal treatment under the law, and that's the real test. Can a Justice Department scarred by years of political battles regain credibility? Can Americans look at the FBI or the DOJ and once again believe that the law applies the same to everyone, no matter how powerful or unpopular? These questions won't be answered overnight. They will be answered only through actions that prove impartiality is more than a slogan carved on a building. They will be answered in the choices Bondi makes if she leads the DOJ, and they will be answered in whether Americans feel justice belongs to them or just to those in power. So now the question comes to you. Do you believe the Department of Justice can ever be trusted again, or has the damage already been done? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Let's hear your take. And if you found this breakdown valuable, make sure to hit like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss the stories that shape the nation's future.